For months and months, social media has been coming for so-called Nepo babies in Hollywood. Famous actors, musicians, artists, and writers with parents who are also famous actors, musicians, artists, and writers. But it's not exactly a new phenomenon. In a recent deep dive from Vulture, basically a nepotism yearbook has prompted a wave of shock and disappointment at just how much of Hollywood got their starts due to a famous mom or dad. I mean, we're talking about Jennifer Aniston, Gwyneth Paltrow, Angelina Jolie. But it's not just Hollywood. In fields all across the U.S., parents are helping their kids get a foot in the door. Harvard economist and research scientist Matthew Steger looked into census data statistics and found that 29% of Americans work for a parent's employer at least once by the age of 30, bumping up their initial earnings by an average of 17%. But this corporate nepotism doesn't transcend across race, with black men far less likely to work for a parent's employer than white men, costing them over time. In fact, Matthew Steger attributes around 4% of the wage gap to the lower frequency at which young black men land a job at a parent's employer. And he joins us now. Matthew, I want to tell you that, I didn't understand this concept of a Nepo baby, but it certainly has widespread effects. So talk to me a little bit about your research.
Sure. So I can start by just giving you a broad overview of my paper. So just as some brief motivation, in the US, economic outcomes are highly persistent from one generation to the next. So what that means is that individuals who are born into income families go on to earn much more than individuals who are born to low-income families. But whether or not this is a concern is it really depends on kind of what drives these patterns. And so I was really interested in understanding the extent to which the connections in the labor market shape rates of intergenerational mobility. So do individuals who are born to high-income parents tend to earn more in adulthood because their parents are providing access to high-paying jobs? And so to do this, what I did was focused on one particular type of labor market network, which were connections at the parents' firms. So these are parents providing access to jobs at the firms that they currently work for. And so I tackled this project by answering three questions. First, how often do people work for the same firms as their parents and why? Second, what are the earnings consequences? And third, who benefits more from these types of connections? So the answer to the first question was that it's actually fairly common for individuals to work for the same firms as their parents. So I find that 29% of individuals will work for the same firm as a parent, but at some point before the age of 30. Second, I find that there are pretty large earnings benefits from doing so. So working for the same firm as a parent increases earnings by about 17%. And to put that in perspective, that's about 1/4 of the returns that come from obtaining a college degree. And third, I find that high-income parents are in the best position to provide access to high-paying jobs. And so individuals from high-income backgrounds tend to benefit disproportionately from this type of network connection. And so putting all of that together, what I find is that about 7% of the correlation between the income of parents and the income of young workers is attributable to these connections that operate within parents' firms. So, to be sure, these connections that operate within the parents' firms are not the main reason why we see economic outcomes persist from one generation to the next. But I think my results do raise the possibility that labor market network connections more broadly defined, so inclusive of ones outside of the parents' firms, may actually be an important determinant of economic mobility in the United States.
And as I was reading your work here, and we apologize to folks at home. We know the connection's a little bit shaky, but as I was reading some of your work here, I noticed that you sort of focus in the middle 89% of income earners. You didn't do the extremely poor or the extremely wealthy. Why did you decide to focus on that middle 89% or so?
So this is partly just attributable to data limitation. So the data that I used for this project basically come from two sources. One is the decennial census survey. So that's a survey that the government runs to interview kind of everyone in the US to enumerate the size of the population. And I used that survey to identify the relationships between parents and children. The second piece of data is called the LEHD database. And so this is a data set built off of the unemployment insurance records and contains basically information on people's earnings and the identity of their employer for everyone in the United States. And so using those data, I was able to build a data set that told me both kind of where people work, how much they earn, and who their parents were. And those are kind of the key features of the data that I need to tackle my question of interest. One limitation of those data is that they don't do a good job of covering kind of the bottom 10% of earners and the top 1%. And that's primarily because for those groups of people, the major source of their income is outside of earnings that are covered by the unemployment insurance. So kind of simply by necessity or limitation of the data that I was using, I was focused on this kind of middle chunk of the income distribution. And, I think kind of the popular focus on Nepo babies in Hollywood probably has more to do with what's going on at the kind of top 1% or very high end of the income distribution.
Right.
And maybe one point to take away from my paper is that this phenomenon actually happens throughout the distribution, and it's not limited to kind of the highest earners or the celebrities that are in Hollywood.
Right. And what are, we gave the statistic about the wealth gap. What are some other harms that can come from basically parents, just trying to help out their kids?
Right. So to talk a little bit more about the race gap, I think that's kind of an interesting finding. So some recent work actually by some of my colleagues at Opportunity Insights has provided evidence that the kind of gap that we find in economic outcomes between Black and white individuals is unlikely to close over time in future generations. And the reason for that is because on average, Black boys tend to grow up to earn less than white boys, even when looking at children whose parents earn the exact same income. And one of the findings of my paper is that Black boys are also significantly less likely to work for a parent's employer relative to white boys, even when looking at children born to parents with the same income. And so the implication of that is that part of the reason why racial gaps, at least between Black and white individuals, are likely to persist in future generations is because white children disproportionately benefit from gaining access to jobs through their parents' connections.
So in the last minute or so, is this a problem that you would think we need to solve for, or is it just a matter of being more aware in terms of hiring practices on a higher corporate level?
So I think two responses to that. The first is that, my paper is really focusing on one narrow type of connection. These are connections within a parent's current employer. And I find that these connections, explain about a little bit less than 10% of the kind of reason why inequality persists from one generation to the next. So this is not kind of the main reason why, inequality persists from one generation to the next. And so I think kind of the first implication of this study is that, we should take a closer look at labor market networks more broadly defined. If it's the case that when we kind of consider all labor market networks, that these are an important shaper of how inequality persists from one generation to the next, then I think we can start thinking more seriously about the implications of that. And I would say kind of the main concern that this would raise is one related to fairness. I think most people in the United States would agree that it's unfair that individuals from high-income families kind of get a leg up because of the labor market connections of their parents. So in that sense, I think we should potentially be concerned about this. But again, I think that point really depends on kind of how prevalent and how important the wider aspects of networks are in shaping rates of intergenerational mobility.
All right. Very interesting work. Matthew Steger, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.